Missile
snare, yeah. Crit, ouch. Okay, when they all pair up like that, that's good for thunder.
Yeah. Oh my god.
You're gonna... Okay, Terran is dead. Oh my god. Oh no. Since the birth of this channel, the goal of making my girlfriend play games was to turn her into my ideal co-op partner. But as we both came to find out, she already was the best partner for me. What I didn't expect is that she's now getting good enough at these games to take things a step further. The girl of 2 or 3 years ago wouldn't touch something like hardcore honor mode with a 10-foot pole, but here we are.
Easy now. Let's not do anything hilarious.
So this week we're putting her and our relationship to the test in one of our favorite date night games with Baldur's Gate 3. Join us as we find out if this connection has what it takes to become a hardcore one. Terran, what happened?
How did it miss?
Okay, I walked into it. It's all good.
Thank God.
I gotta teach you how to throw these potions. Now I know what you're thinking. How in the world did I ever convince her to do this? Don't get me wrong, it definitely helped that she loves Baldur's Gate so much. Hey, there she is. It's my girl.
My girl. Talking about my girl.
My girl.
My girl.
My girl. We're in honor mode.
Ooh.
But what really convinced her was the idea that this playthrough could be the authentic D&D experience. What I explained to her was that honor mode is the closest we can get to an actual evening of Dungeons & Dragons. When the party wipes in tabletop, you don't reload a save file. You start a fresh campaign the next week with the crew. If that wasn't convincing enough, then there was also the allure of getting to mess around with the character creator every time we had to start a new playthrough. I imagine you can piece together how she felt about that proposition. I caught a couple hairstyle choices for you, and I think I found one that you might like.
Ooh, awesome.
So while we're waiting for her to design her first character, allow me to hand things over to her while she mulls over what hairstyles we should pick.
Playing through an honor run isn't always smooth, but with Manscaped's Dome Shaver Pro, your head sure will be. Wanting to go the authentic role-playing route this playthrough, my boyfriend considered shaving his entire head to match his monk. Although, as you can imagine, I had a couple of reservations about that. Number one of which, there's no guarantee his monk will survive an entire playthrough since he's playing with me. After mulling it over, we decided to leave him with his full head of hair, but we've got the Dome Shaver on standby just in case. If you're embracing the open-fisted combat style for yourself, you may want a Dome Shaver of your own though. Its 5 rotary blades are specially designed to give your head the cleanest, smoothest shave possible. This tool has Manscaped's skin-safe technology, meaning you have peace of mind that you're rolling with advantage to avoid those pesky nicks and cuts. The Dome Shaver Pro comes with an easy-to-hold grip for any weapon proficiency, even you Dex users. Not only that, but it's fully waterproof, has a rechargeable battery, and its travel lock keeps it powered off while it's in your inventory. The magnetic blade head is super easy to pop off, which makes cleaning a breeze while taking a long rest at camp. But when picking out camp supplies for the night, make sure you don't sleep on the Dome Soother lotion. It's formulated with soothing ingredients like aloe to calm and nourish your skin after shaving. This lotion is alcohol-free and dermatologist tested to be gentler on the scalp. Plus it smells real good and has a couple of points to charisma. On second thought, maybe I should let him shave his head. Head on over to manscaped.com and get your Dome Shaver Pro and Dome Soother today. Use the promo code BOYMEETSGIRL for 20% off your order plus free shipping. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with our code BOYMEETSGIRL at manscaped.com.
I'm really committed to getting this on the first go, because otherwise, I don't know if I could stomach sitting through another character creation. Or 10.
So this is honorable.
Honorable girl. Nice.
And we'll do like 2, 3, 4, like
3,
if we need.
4, yeah. What are you talking about, Taryn? This is the one.
This is the one.
This is the run. Are you kidding me? In order to up the spice factor in our playthroughs, we decided to spin a roulette wheel to let our classes be decided for us. As if honor mode wasn't a big enough push out of our comfort zone, having the two of us play brand new classes we've never played before just cranks the wild factor up that little bit extra. What we've ended up with is a monk and a warlock duo. I'm a folk hero monk. Taryn.
So I do reroll.
Yeah, you click reroll, and we're just going with class.
I'm a warlock.
Yo, okay, I'm dating a warlock.
Ah!
Do these classes have any kind of synergy? I guess that's up to us to find out. I wanted us both playing something completely new so we could really test our knowledge of the game and maybe get a little creative with how we go about winning our battles.
God, we should have done our
Oh my god,
rolls.
Ted, look at this guy.
Yo.
He's a monk.
He's a monk.
What was he again? He was a folk hero.
You know, warlocks?
Uh-huh.
They have like their power, and a lot of times it's like used in dark and nefarious ways. I'm like, I I can be evil Tiny.
That sounds about right. The early game tends to be the hardest part, so playing a new class after each death will keep things challenging, but also interesting.
Ooh, okay, so my main focus is I'm going to be using my cantrip Eldritch Blast paired with Hex to debuff enemies.
Normally this type of thing would be a date night, but the fact that it's honor mode actually means I'm making her do it. Should we go do the— Open the gates! Open the bloody gates!
Yeah, do we have enough to... Like, we're level 2.
Oh, we'll be fine. We got the help of all the people there.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Oh god, wait, so you're dead?
I just got hit 2 12s.
Ah!
Will, you didn't want to use that potion on your boy? Since this is an open relationship, we won't be bringing along any party members for this adventure. Hazel is dead.
Damn.
I did what I had to, Taryn.
You put her out of her misery?
She jumped ship, Taryn. I had no control over the situation.
Oh my god.
I was an unwitting actor. That doesn't mean we won't let them hang around our camp, though. Oh god, look at this warlock walking up with all kinds of swagger.
Oh.
He doesn't realize I've seen what he looks like without clothes on, and it's not impressive. As long as they take care of themselves, we don't mind the company. But they're on their own when it comes to food, because my girlfriend isn't sharing any of her snacks. God, these people keep trying to third wheel us, Taryn, and it's like... And Gale's hungry again. Man, you freeloaders need to get out of our damn camp, I'm telling you. The two of us were definitely overthinking everything since this was honor mode, and each decision felt like it had so much more weight to it. Every resource was precious, but you don't have to ask her twice to loot everything that isn't tied down.
I already know I'm gonna need like a ton of money for potions and...
I was thinking the same thing, because I'm going to need to get Hill Giant Strength. This time it's going to be me that needs it.
Yep, and all the scrolls of Revivify.
Yep. But that's why we can steal. Camp supplies would never be an issue thanks to all the weird stuff she finds along the sides of the road.
I got so many carrots and potatoes.
Yum.
It was a good harvest of rummaging around from dead people.
Evidently, she has a bit of a debuff because she's stuck with me on this playthrough.
Okay, get this. This is a dex check, right? I have a bonus of +5, and I only have to roll 7. Nice.
That's hilarious.
So I only could have messed it up if I roll a 1.
Despite having much better AI than the Origin characters, the boyfriend class comes with a significant disadvantage in the luck department. I had advantage and I still didn't roll successfully. Even with the boyfriend luck, or lack thereof, the early game is pretty forgiving with the dice rolls, and most conflict can be settled with a pair of fists anyways. I just rolled a 1, are you kidding me?
A 1? Oh no.
The nice thing about doing this together is I can give our journey a little bit of direction. We both know full well that if she was left to her own devices, she'd be too busy talking to animals to start any of the quests.
Potatoes, we're eating good tonight.
Between that and the dye traders, it's up to yours truly to start the quests and make sure this relationship leaves the harbor. Okay, we're kind of haven't been talking for a little bit. We've both just been doing our own thing. What are you up to?
I just dyed my outfit and now I'm going to camp. I'm gonna go steal the potions and scrolls from everybody.
We both have our priorities in check, it sounds like.
What are you doing?
I just started like 6 of the quests here in the Grove. Got a Mind Flayer Parasite and figured I'd squat up with my lady. We had a lot of cool ideas about how we wanted to tackle the first act, and somehow none of them came to bear fruit. We kept screwing things up, but in hardcore, there's no way to undo our mistakes. No! Well, living with honor mode is living with your decisions. God damn it. For her, that's kind of the selling point for hardcore anyways, and what makes it kind of cool.
So we are regrouping a little bit. We're trying to figure out a strategy for the spiders.
The spiders
died,
killed,
so we can't get the poison.
Me. You ran away.
Yes.
Where does that leave us? Aside from annoyed and confused. It's a lot like life, where things don't always go your way and the dice don't always land in your favor. Sometimes you just gotta make do with the hand you're dealt and hang on until luck turns itself around. It was like you critical missed.
Yeah.
Just across the board, not a good last turn. The early game is more or less about figuring out the nuances of your classes and climbing your way through the first few levels. Yeah, we're nowhere close to level. I can't, like, level 5, I feel like, is when things, like, a class really comes together, you know?
Exactly.
Most encounters have some kind of environmental hazards that you can use to your advantage to make the fights much easier. I don't have a ranged attack, but if you can range attack that foundation block, it'll take out at least one of those guys.
Let's try it out.
Oh yeah, I got both of them.
So good.
It's hard to say who was more helpful earlier on, my girlfriend or her cat familiar.
And so no one, they're not gonna get mad at the cat, right?
They won't get mad, it's just a cat.
cat.
All right, now we can sneak in ourselves. The fight's already started, so we don't have to worry about the sight cones. Either way, we kept crunching down NPCs into more experience points. Well done, cat. Some things don't always play out as smoothly as others, but it's early enough in the game that mistakes aren't too punishing.
Yeah.
It did not hit the warp. Never mind. It was supposed to be really cool.
Oh, it always is. It always is.
Of course, this is still honor mode, so anytime one of us goes down, it's stressful because the entire playthrough is now resting on the shoulders of one person. Okay, Saza is dead.
Do we get XP?
As the more reckless one between the two of us, it's especially stressful for my girlfriend when my bravado goes completely up in smoke and she's the only one left to bail the both of us out. No, he's gonna be safe. Oh, shit.
Oh, I have 6 health. Do I back up?
Okay, wait, disengage. Do disengage.
Um.
It's the arrows. Yep. Yep, on yourself so it can't opportunity attack you, and then use the door behind you.
Okay.
Oh my god.
That turned south so quickly.
I kept making the mistake of taking the lead on a lot of the dialogue checks, which was wrong for a couple of reasons. Man, I shouldn't be doing this. I don't have any persuasion. Both classes I've played are charisma classes.
Oh no, so you're used to be able to waltz up and just be cheeky. Maybe you should let me come do it.
Aside from the fact that I have boyfriend bad luck, there's also the fact that I'm playing a low charisma monk. We haven't died or anything yet. We had like one close miss. I'm gonna do this troll thing because this is a good. We'll know if we're gonna die if I handle how depending on how this goes.
12 seconds later.
Okay. So somehow I didn't do that correctly.
Like try? Aren't they gonna be aggressive to me?
They might. I wasn't really paying attention and I clicked the wrong thing. My girlfriend, on the other hand, is playing a warlock whose main stat is charisma. So I guess she really should be the one talking.
Well. Okay. I am hereby commandeering this video. So
Alright, I'm gonna go Emerald Grove. You deal with the trolls.
Okay. Is this even a make my girlfriend play? I'm starting to think he just wanted to play Baldur's Gate with me.
Okay, check this out. Check this out. I'm gonna push this guy. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna push this guy here. Okay, I'm gonna back it up now that he can't opportunity attack me. And then I'm gonna throw one of these. Check this out.
Okay. Wow, so good.
And they're both dead. Taryn.
Anyways, I should be the one talking, he says. Considering this is honor mode, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but I will hand it to him that it certainly added to the zaniness of the playthrough. Just don't get mad at me when I pick the wrong thing and everything goes to hell in a handbasket.
This could have gone easy for you. Not now, though.
Uh-oh.
Ouch.
So how many people? Oh, God. Is that the entire camp?
Yep.
Shit, including our traitor.
Yep.
What? Why did we do this way?
I don't know. Where's the cat? Oh, that's why it called everybody in, because the cat was outside.
Shit. So if I dismiss the cat, will they leave?
They're still going to be in combat with us.
Oh, God. After pissing off the entire interior of the Shattered Sanctum, the two of us snuck down to the Underdark to figure out where to go from here.
Okay. But for now, we're in the Underdark, which means we can go to the Myconid colony and get a lot of good shit.
Yeah. He was holding out hope that he could turn invisible and sneak back in to send Minthara to the Grove so we could still do that fight. But spoiler alert, he couldn't.
I've been dreaming of you.
You are transforming.
It's Noiki boy. Look at how cool Tarny and Noiki look in their gold. While he was tinkering around testing things, I left for a bathroom break.
I just like tore my ACL jumping off of that. Whoops.
Probably gonna use the restroom real quick while you do that. And somehow when I got back, he'd gotten mixed up in this nightmare of an encounter.
Oh, I didn't know he could jump up here. That's a problem.
What in the world is going on?
Make sure you're sneaking. A mistake was made.
Oh man, I'm so confused what happened.
Some weird stuff happened, I'm not gonna lie. Nothing that you would care to hear about, frankly.
Okay, well.
He might not be able to get to me because of the difficult terrain.
I have 2 scrolls of sleep.
Okay, I'm gonna take the turn to drink a big potion,
Okay.
and let's see if he can get to me. Because I basically need to keep them on the thing. See, so they keep getting hit.
Exactly.
There we go. They're putting in work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hide inside of there. I should be safe in here. See, he doesn't know what to do. Other than get away from those things. They're still gonna hit him. Nice. And it's gonna get an AoE on both.
So good.
Maybe the other one will do both too. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah!
We did it. I didn't realize that those gates could break. That's why that went so bad. They broke the gates.
Wow.
So I lured them over here to get some easy experience.
But
I
it
mean,
wasn't as easy as you thought.
It wasn't what I thought it was at all.
It's very alarming how easy it is to make everyone hate you in this game.
God forbid we piss off every faction in this entire game, Taryn.
I know, we need like someone who will take our stuff. We both knew that the world would open up if we could just reach level 5. But how you get there is different for every playthrough. I can tell you that antagonizing the entire goblin camp significantly narrowed our options for trades and experience though.
Well, he's dead. That was a chasm, so no ring. Whoops. Well, we gotta live with our decisions, Taryn.
Okay.
That was my bad. I kind of couldn't pass up the opportunity to give him a shove. He was just asking for it with where he was standing.
Levels of enemies kind of ricocheted around between the surface and the Underdark. So the two of us are finding that some of the encounters were complete jokes, while others were much scarier.
What is he doing? What? Sir?
Why did he do that? Did he just run away?
He just killed himself.
No, we needed the experience for saving
I literally,
him.
Taryn, I threw him a Misty Step scroll.
Because he can use it, right?
Yeah. And the rest is history. Hey, look, Scroll of Misty Step. Okay.
Well, at least you still get your scroll.
What the hell? I don't know why we can't manage to save that guy in any playthrough we do.
It's
Even
way
when we
too
know the
accurate.
solution to how to save him, we still, for some reason, cannot save him.
Yup. The fights that were light work would build up our confidence, but then a battle down the road would knock us right back down again. There's 4 of them.
Oh, look out, Taryn.
Oh, shit.
Oh my god. Well, there goes all those barrels.
Damn it. I even saw that and I was like, that's clever. Playing a completely new class on a permadeath run was certainly a choice, but one of these co-op partners is not like the other. I don't know if I was just playing wrong, but he was completely blowing me out of the water in terms of how much damage he was dealing. Salts of Hill Giant's fingernails.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, Taryn. I'm having a bit of a substance abuse issue here with this monk. I keep drinking elixirs of Hill Giant strength and I can't stop. I'm addicted to this stuff.
I kind of understand it because he thrives in this type of environment. If there's one thing he loves, it's building up a fresh character and really figuring out their strengths and weaknesses.
Get an unarmed attack, use an improvised weapon, or throw something, your strength modifier is added. And then we're going to put that into con because I'm going to use Hill Giants. Boom.
Unless the Warlock is just sort of an ugly duckling class, I probably wasn't playing to my advantages, and leaning super heavily on him was letting me get away with it.
All right, Tarn, I'm coming for you.
Climb your ass up here to come save your lady.
Tarn, is this guy bothering you?
Although, I know for a certifiable fact that if the roles were reversed and he was the Warlock, he'd totally be hard carrying us and I'd be playing a completely flaccid monk.
No! Why?
Oh, damn, you just like executed him through dialogue, Taryn.
This awkward middle section of Act 1 is all about gaining experience. The power jump from level 4 to 5 is fairly significant for most classes, but for ours especially, it has a ton of huge perks that we didn't want to miss out on for the fights to come.
This class is great, Taryn.
I'm glad you're having fun.
Oh my god.
So basically, the two of us did a quick lap around the map and pushed and shoved our way as close to level 5 as we could get.
Should I shove her off?
Yeah. I think she's dead.
I love how the music gets all triumphant.
The nice thing is I think we can go get our body later. He loves to run off and fight things all by himself because he knows how cautious I am. This looks like blood, but it's just the wine. Reminds me of
Try the wine.
Since this is honor mode, I tend to spend a lot more time thinking than fighting. And his idea of pushing me off the diving board is to just start swinging before I have time to talk him out of it.
It wasn't me. Oh god. Alright, well. You guys, we could have done this the easy way.
Or even is the friend?
It's a real shame they're made of experience points, Taryn.
Yeah, for them. The fights he gets into on his own are probably the best because I love sipping tea and watching him get his ass kicked from a safe distance.
What did I do?
So I'm
Oh
mad at you.
shit, they're pissed at me.
Who's they?
The whole Zentarum crew. What?
Oh no, what
Okay.
happened?
I don't know, but I'm gonna deal with it. Don't worry about me.
Although, sometimes the reverse happens where he gets so caught up thinking that he forgets he has a teammate fighting too. Watching his brain work 100 miles an hour to solve a battle is charming at the very least.
Okay, so she's threatened by me, so I'm gonna stay down here, and the paladin's probably gonna go in on me.
Do you want me to just Eldritch Blaster and you can move?
Oh! I have a partner!
Yeah, isn't that fun?
Oh my god, yes.
Stay there just in case it misses. I have 75% though, so it should
Yeah.
be okay.
I got you. Good shit, Taryn. Okay, now I'll come up and join you.
Yeah.
This is great.
I'm kind of cool.
I forgot that I had a friend.
The beginning of the second act starts when the party enters the Shadow-Cursed lands. In order for us to make it there are a couple different ways to go about it, but our method of choice is usually through the Grimforge, because the other one terrifies us.
Okay, they're attacking me, Taryn.
Oh no.
It's okay, I'm gonna escape.
Okay.
Ooh, I rolled bad though. He missed. That didn't work. Ow. I just need to survive like one more hit, I think. I am dead. Would you be so kind as to withers me?
The Dwergar are the gatekeepers of the area, and in order to access it, we have to get past them. The first batch are relatively easy to take out since our pet Boulette helped to make things a bit easier. Is there any other angle that Boulette can like land on him?
I'm not sure why that didn't kill him, because it said it did 110 damage.
Yeah, I'm so confused.
I'm assuming it just killed the barrels or something? I don't really understand.
But the really scary battle comes next.
We do the boat fight because we have thundering arrows, which would make it go pretty quick.
That's true. How many guys board?
I think there's like at least 5 of them.
Uh-huh.
And that's not including like if you shove the guy off at the start.
Right.
My big fear is like if I don't roll,
Yeah.
then you like I could get shoved off turn 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Scared about that too. Our victory may have led to a little cockiness as we jumped right into that boat battle and realized pretty quickly that we were a level lower than we were supposed to be.
Okay, we're doing it. We're going into the darkness. We got this, Taryn.
Ooh, we got this.
You look like such a dick.
Oh.
What are you doing on Gex Raft?
Should I just shove him in?
Yeah.
+6 and +2.
Okay.
+7, we can do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, easy.
Oh. Yeah, my man's not
Let's
letting
go.
anyone board my boat.
We got a fight on our hands here. Guys, I'll light him up. Nice.
Missile
Missile
snare.
snare, yeah. Crit, ouch. Okay, when they all pair up like that, that's good for thunder.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my god.
You're gonna... Okay, Taryn is dead. Oh my god. Oh no.
Oh my god.
What do I do? Depending on how this arrow goes. Okay, one of them finally fell off.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure that we're gonna live another turn.
Should we like split up? Like
Yes.
Smart, smart.
Okay. God. Okay, that's not good. Is he boarding? That's bad. Okay, you're dead.
Oh God.
Okay.
Nice, nice.
There's still an invisible guy somewhere.
Yeah. Do you have more potions of invisibility?
This is my last thunder. Is that guy enlarged? Can he not
He's
be
enlarged.
What does that mean?
Let me examine.
Okay, they can still fall off. But I can knock him off way easier. So let me do this. God damn it, this game. Okay. Excuse me? Sir?
He thinks you're over there.
Oh. Okay, that's not good. Wait. Okay. Oh, haste just ran out. 1 sec. I have 9 turns. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay, haste ran out. Okay. Target's too far to resurrect. He's got detecting presence on, though.
Mm-hmm.
Only have 6 turns here.
And you can resurrect me and that won't bring...
1 second. Where do I resurrect you at? It's gonna break my invisibility. Here? Okay, I got a 6.
Okay.
I can get rid of this guy. He's got 70 health? I didn't know these guys were level 5s. Wait. You have thunder arrows, right?
Yes, yes.
You got a thunder arrow that woman off the boat. That's your job.
The Bana?
The woman with the crossbow. And once you've fired that, you drink a big potion.
Yeah. So like here. Like I need you to like look at my screen.
That's correct, right there. There you go.
Thank
She's gone.
God.
Okay. So I think you drink an invisibility potion.
Okay, so not a health, but an invisibility.
Yeah, use one of my invisibilities.
I might have one. Yeah, I have
one.
one.
Use invisibility. He's detecting presence, but I'm gonna protect you.
Okay, and then
I'm gonna try to get rid of him. I don't know how this man has decided to go into the water, but he has. I can only hit him from here. Okay.
Okay.
I think you're just outside of the range, which is nice. Okay, good.
I'm ending turn.
Okay, I'm gonna hit him again.
Okay.
See, because he could shove me off is the thing that I'm afraid of. So I'm gonna go over here in the hopes that he's gonna hit me. Charm. He won't be able to touch me if he gets charmed. He's charmed.
Nice, he's
he
charmed.
literally
He's
can't hurt me.
charmed.
So the only thing that can hurt me is the assassin. I'm gonna go up here to lure him away from you.
Smart, smart.
The assassin's over there somewhere. Ow. Charm him too. They're both charmed.
They're both charmed. Okay. Okay.
Neither of them can hurt me, and you're invisible. This is nice. This guy is under the boat. Are we gonna lose our honor run because the man is under the boat? Oh, see, he did go where...
Yeah.
What is he doing?
I don't know. But I do a big potion.
Okay, wait. So you still have 10 turns of invisibility,
Yeah.
but he's detecting presence. I don't think I can hit this man because he's under the fucking boat.
What do you mean under the boat?
For
I
me,
see him.
He's under the boat right now.
What?
Look at my screen.
What the hell?
So I'm gonna go down the stairs.
Yeah.
He's gonna get a hit on me even though he's under the fucking boat, which doesn't make any sense. Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully you can hit him off, because if you hit him off, then I can heal myself.
Ugh.
He got saved. Damn it. And now we're both exposed.
Can you even hit that guy?
I can't hit the guy. He's glitched under the boat for me. He's got 28 health. I could literally kill him if he wasn't under the boat. It's so frustrating. Okay. So, I'm going to use a big potion, and so are you. Pray for a big number here. 12 is going to have to be good enough. And then I'm going to go invisible.
Yeah.
With a scroll. So what's this guy going to do? Okay. Not good. Okay, you're dead.
So he's not enlarged anymore.
Okay. I have 10 minutes of invisibility.
Because that guy moved, is he still glitched for you?
He's not glitched for me anymore.
That's good.
We got to get the big guy out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. Fight ended. Let's get you back. They're fully healed. Great. Okay, I'm gonna spawn you. Oh, God, there's no good place to spawn you. I just need to hope you get a good roll. Okay, we both rolled high. Huge, huge. Okay, do you have thunder arrows?
Yeah.
Okay. The big guy is dangerous. We just need to thin the herd, basically. So,
Yeah.
if you could hit both, that'd be huge.
And this looks good, right? Like looking at my screen.
That looks fine.
Okay.
Oh my God, just every single one misses. Come on. A critical miss. Oh my God.
I have 1 health.
Oh, right. You should go invisible again with the bonus action. Drink one of my invisibility potions, and then go like over here.
Go
'Cause
where?
they're-
To where you were?
Get away from that, like go over there.
Yeah.
Because that other guy, they're gonna double into me, I'm almost positive.
So one of your invisibility potions.
I need to figure out what to do here. We have only 2 of those left, so
Yeah.
we need to make these count.
Yeah.
I can't believe we doubled into this guy and he didn't budge. We should have just gone for the assassin. There'd be one guy to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Can I throw him? 90% chance to throw. Goodbye.
Thank God. Okay.
He's gone. He's
So
gone.
I'm still gonna go invisible.
You're still sticking to the plan. And get to your corner.
And he doesn't have detect presence, right?
He does, but he's gonna go for me. I'm gonna stand here so he doesn't go near you.
Okay.
Okay, let's get our momentum back. He thinks you're down there. That's where he is. Charm. We got the charm off.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna try to throw him.
Yeah.
He can't do anything because he can't hit me and you're invisible. So he's just confused. Detecting presence. Ooh, very close.
Oh,
very
God, okay.
close. Almost too close for comfort. But I think this will do it. See ya.
Oh,
my God. We almost lost that one turn.
Yeah.
What the hell?
That fight was the closest we'd come to death by far, and it gave us a bit of a reality check about this whole honor mode thing. We kept pushing forwards into the Grimforge with slightly more caution, but I wish I could say we learned our lesson from that battle.
Okay, she's not an issue anymore. It's just Nier now. Okay, so
She's not an issue
let me try to
anymore.
stun Nier.
Yeah.
Stunned.
Nice. So can we
So-
both lay into him now?
I think I can take him out actually, because I have haste potion still. There we go.
Nice. Having finally achieved level 5 from that boat fight, the two of us were enjoying our huge power spike. Maybe even a little too much.
Taryn. I am just like the king. What can I even say, Taryn? Let's get rid of this guy. Yeah, why not? Stun.
Oh my god.
These guys are gonna die.
I feel like you were the ambush for them.
Yeah, I sprung the trap on them.
The fact that my boyfriend was so easily soloing these encounters gave me a huge boost in confidence in our abilities. Despite the whole fiasco on the boat, the point should be made that he never got knocked down once. I felt like as long as he was on the field, most of these encounters were a foregone conclusion. Of course, God forbid he were ever the one to go down first.
Back. Return to sender. He's dead. Love this. This class is great.
You do more damage with just your 2 fists against every guy combined compared to like what I can try and just do in like, you know, every single hit of mine.
It's very fun. That's all I gotta say about that.
Like Tarn did absolutely nothing and Key like fought every single person at like with like 8 health left.
Hey, I appreciate you being here.
The real test of our mettle was waiting at the forge itself. In order to make me a new shield, we had to face off with the forge's guardian in an arena completely surrounded by magma. What could possibly go wrong with that?
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me.
Oh my god!
Okay. Okay. Well, there he is. Okay, I'm dead. Can you throw me a potion again? Okay, well that was your turn. He's gonna kill me now. Okay, I'm up.
Okay.
I don't have a turn, but I'm up. That's gonna have to be enough. Let's see what he does. 35. Okay.
Okay.
Now, at least you're not knocked down.
Yeah.
Okay. I can haste myself by running into this. Now I'm hasted.
Yeah.
I think I need to just start lighting him up. You need to get out of there. So I think you should Misty Step
To the...
far away from him. He's gonna be aggroed to me. Okay, I can hit him twice and then
And
hide.
then hide, yeah.
There's a crit. Okay.
Oh my god!
What?
What just happened?
It was the reverberations.
Oh.
You should have Misty stepped sooner.
Well, I
You
just-
waited. I mean, it's not your fault, but
I was like, I didn't want to like, because if I Misty stepped, I couldn't go invisible.
you could have used a scroll to go invisible. I was trying to tell you that.
I didn't understand. Fuck. All at the same time. We have fun.
Well, that was rather the abrupt ending to our first duo honor run together. Obviously, it didn't end the way we wanted it, but that's the name of the game. Originally, we hoped to make a 3-part series out of Act 1, 2, and 3, but having already died this early, that might pan out a little bit differently than what we want. Although we're far from done with playing Baldur's Gate on honor mode, and hopefully the next time you see us, we'll have made it through the Shadow Curse lands, or at least died trying. You are awful at throwing potions, both in and out of the game. I don't think I've ever asked you to like throw a potion at me and it's succeeded. Ever. Recently, the two of us have started streaming on Twitch, and we're having a ton of fun with it. Consider stopping by to say hello and leaving us a follow, because we have so much fun chatting with you all. If seeing our next attempt of Act 1 is something that interests you, we'd be open to streaming it as well, so let us know down below. For now, as one story ends, another begins. And that means we're gonna have to sit through yet another character creation. So it's goodbye for now, and I'll see you all once she settles on a hairstyle.